Welcome to the Empowered Homes podcast. The purpose of this podcast is to be a resource to connect church and home by growing strong families.
Hi, this is Bobby Cooley. On today's episode, we're going to be interviewing Jonathan McKee. On the show, we're going to have Joe Landy with us as we discuss with Jonathan several different topics. Specifically, he's got a new book that he just wrote on the 4 battles every young man must face. It's an incredible book. It's awesome. And it's just a really great conversation. We talk a lot about the book and the battles that young men face, but we also talk about how to just set up strategic conversations with your kids and how important it is to be mindful of that and to really safeguard them and protect them from some things. So it's really interesting talking to him. He's got more resources online you can check out, as well as check out more resources on the empoweredhomes.org.
My name is Joe Landy. I'm the student pastor here at Kingsland Baptist Church in Katy, Texas. I'm joined by our adult discipleship pastor, Bobby Cooley, and he's going to introduce our guest today.
Yeah, super excited about our guest today. We got Jonathan McKee. Jonathan is author over 20 books, including the brand new Guy's Guide for 4 Battles Every Young Man Must Face. He's also written an Amazon bestseller, Guy's Guide to God, Girls, and the Phone in Their Pockets. And for you parents, he wrote an incredible book, If Parenting Had a Do-Over. He's got over 20 years of youth ministry experience, speaks to parents and leaders worldwide, also providing free resources, yes, free, for parents on his website, thesourceforparents.com. Jonathan and his wife, Lori, live in Northern California. Jonathan, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me. This is fun. Glad we get to have a
Welcome,
conversation.
Jonathan.
Yeah. Hey, tell us just before we get going about yourself and your family.
Oh man, yeah. It's been a fun journey. Been in youth ministry 25 plus years. Actually started working parachurch ministry back in with an organization called Youth for Christ, reaching kids on campus, plugging them into the local church, and so it was really fun. I was actually working for the parachurch, volunteering for the church. We started the Source for Youth Ministry, we're in our 17th year. So for the last couple decades, mostly been speaking, traveling, writing, and our whole goal is to put resources in the hands of people on the front lines, parents, youth workers who are making an impact in the lives of young people. And so my wife and I actually, during this whole journey, raised our 3 kids. Our 3 kids are out of the home, just married off my youngest last December.
Wow.
And she now lives with her husband in Tennessee, and the other 2 still here in California, both several hundred miles away from us. Just hung out with my son back in Mother's Day, and my daughter a couple weeks before that. So they're boomerang kids. We send them out, and every once in a while they come back and visit. It's kind of
That's
cool.
awesome, man.
But no, it's a fun journey. And man, the parenting journey can be tough today, especially in a world with devices in the pocket. So it's a fun ministry, being able to reach out and help people. And it's funny, my middle girl, Alyssa, who's 23, going on 24 years old, works actually at Westmont Christian College in SoCal. She and I just signed a contract to write a book together, and we're going to be writing about face-to-face communication in a screen-to-screen world. So this is
That's
ongoing
awesome.
dialogue with my own kids, and it's kind of fun to have my young, millennial 20-something kid working with me on this journey. So that's kind of
that's
fun.
awesome.
Dude, that's
Well, you're
so
talking
awesome.
to 2 guys here who have young kids, all under like 10.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a bunch of our listeners and stuff, they have all types of ranges, man. So we're looking forward to your wisdom here, bro.
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah, and wisdom just means I did all things wrong and went, whoops, don't do that again.
Okay,
So that's all it means.
Yes. Well, you got a new book just came out this month. I want to talk about that for a little bit. The Guy's Guide to 4 Battles Every Young Man Faces.
Yeah.
Why do you think this resonates? The Guy's Guide books that you have, why do you think that resonates with our young men today?
Well, you know what? It's really simply because they're very honest. They aren't Sunday school answers, and by that I mean it's not just young people are dealing with so much today. I mean, think about this: we live in a country where the average young person gets a smartphone at age 10.
Yep.
They spend over 9 hours a day soaking in entertainment media, and when they're not playing Fortnite or laughing at YouTube videos, they're scrolling through social media feeds, and their heroes are, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Drake, and so this is they're kind of they're growing up pretty fast, and young people like this are seeing all these influences, and they don't really want to be told, by adults, sex is bad or just say no to drugs. They want to know why, and so that's what I do. I share the truth in bite-sized pieces so that they'll actually read it. And, because I know when it comes to especially books for young guys, we know who's buying the books. It's mom and dad. It's grandma who's buying books, and they hand their kid them. Here you go, son. Here's a book. Oh, really? A book? Do they have this on YouTube? So it's funny seeing this. It's actually surprised everybody. My first guy's guidebook is literally my bestseller on Amazon. It's going like gangbusters, and it's because when moms and dads actually hand this book to young guys, they try it and they actually go, "Oh, okay, I laughed. This is actually fun." And the cool thing is, this is for youth workers. I mean, Joe knows this well.
Yep.
This is a good small group tool. This is a hey, I got a group of guys that I'm hanging out with this week, and man, we need to talk about real life. We need to talk about the way we treat others. We need to talk about that device in our pocket. We need to talk about these temptations that are there. So both these guys' book have basically served as kind of like this cool small group. Hey, read this chapter this week and let's talk this over. And I know some small group leaders that go, man, to get my guys to even read it, he goes, luckily these chapters are so short, we'll just sit there and we'll actually read right there. We'll read a chapter out loud and then talk about it. We'll read the chapter on my team's guide to social media. We'll read the Snapchat chapter and we'll talk about it. So that's what I did. I want to put resources in the hands of parents and youth workers that open up these conversations. And it's kind of cool to see guys, grasping on the truth in a world so comfortable with lies.
That's good.
Yeah. Why do you, talking about guys, we have young men, and I got an email this morning actually about two young men who's got a single mom and they're looking for a godly male influence. Like, why is it so important for us to kind of go after our young men today?
That's the greatest email in the world, man. I wish all of us got more emails like that. Lots of times the emails are like the triage, the hey, the things I hear is like the parents come up after my workshop and they're always like, man, if I didn't limit my son's screen time, he'd play Xbox all night long. You always hear the I'm in trouble, help me. I love those emails where it's like, hey man, we've got a young man who wants to be discipled. That's awesome. That's great. Those are the fun emails. But yeah, no, this is young men. It's crazy to see how distracted young men are right now. There was this. I was writing an article for our website a while back, and I was talking about today's distracted young men. And I actually, was sharing some of the research, and it was fascinating. There was a Bloomberg article about today's young men, and Bloomberg is all about the business world and finance and this and that. And I was talking about how our economy is really recovered and doing well, and young women are thriving and graduating from college, getting good jobs, whatever. And the one negative amidst literally the best job market we've had forever and all this different stuff is they're like, guys are lagging behind girls right now. Less guys going to college. I mean, you look at colleges, especially go to a Christian college, man. I mean, the college where my daughter works, it's 2 girls for every guy. Yeah. Grand Canyon University, it's like 3 girls. It's 76% female. I mean, and a lot of people are sitting around going, what's going on with guys? This Bloomberg article actually cited a study where they said, hey man, there are 2 distractions that are lagging, where we've got guys 25 years old still living with their parents, still not with a good job. And we see 2 factors, they said, this Bloomberg article, they said weed and video games. Yeah. And in short, it's just kind of like we're seeing so many experts that are saying, hey, you know what? There's, young men are just distracted. Their brain is still developing till 25 years old. And this is one of those things where we're seeing less and less, guys. I mean, Joe, in the youth ministry world,
Yep.
you go to a student leadership conference, I teach at these things. I look out in the audience, sometimes it's 70, 80% female.
Yep.
And so there's some solid guys, but there's also some very distracted guys.
Right.
And so this is one of those things that we as parents and youth leaders need to be proactive, because, I tell you, in middle school, you see these guys kind of at this crossroads, and they love video games, and they love fun, and they love to wrestle, and they don't seem sometimes as serious as the girls. But you know what? If we talk to these young men, and if we engage them, and if we wrestle on the floor with them and engage them in meaningful conversation about stuff that matters, these are the guys who can disciple and develop and start talking about some of these distractions they're going to face before they start making, some of these permanent decisions.
Oh yeah, and we can definitely get into a lot more of that. But that actually, Jonathan, it actually leads me into this next question that, you write about 4 kind of major battles that the guys are going through. You mentioned a couple of them just a moment ago, but you mentioned sexual temptation, screens, controlled substances, and struggles with self-esteem. Why did you choose? I mean, those seem to be big 4. I'm in student ministry for 10 years full time, and man, I'd have to agree with those 4. And even what I'm seeing right now. But why did you choose those 4 things, and what else are you seeing out there?
Yeah, no, great question. And the main reason is, it's funny, when I was even writing this, every youth worker, because whenever I go into town and teach a parent workshop somewhere, whenever I hung out with the youth worker, I'd say, hey, so today's guys, if there's going to be an issue today, what's it going to be? I said, I'm writing about 4 of them. What do you think they are?
Right.
And literally they'd hold up their hand and they'd start, they'd hold up one finger and they'd be like, sexual temptation.
Yep.
Playing video games all night long.
Yeah.
Smoking weed. And then sometimes the 4th one, they didn't, what is a man today? Gender issues. Sometimes you get all kinds of different answers. So that one we really kind of encompassed with this struggles with self-esteem. And I came up with those because those are huge things. I know that if a parent comes up to me after parent workshop and says, hey, let me talk to you about my son, I don't, but I could almost be like, wait, let me guess.
Yeah.
They play Fortnite all night long and you can't get them to stop,
right.
Or you caught them looking at some pictures on their phone, right? Or, I could just name it. I know it's going to be one of these issues. And so much of it comes down to this device because, and you guys are a little younger than me, but even you guys probably didn't grow up with a smartphone in your pocket.
Nope.
You grew up with that other phone where, texting was the big issue, And me, the only thing I grew up in my pocket was lint, man. I grew up in the 80s, but it's interesting because, back when I grew up as a teenager, there was sexual temptation. But it was going over to your friend's house and sneaking in his dad's bedroom in his dresser drawer and pulling out a Playboy magazine, or, going to the liquor store and when the, store owner wasn't looking, reaching up to some high shelf and grabbing that one magazine and looking through it. That's where pornography was. It was something you had to go seek, where now it seeks out you. So the big difference and the issue that's happening today, this huge thing is accessibility.
Yeah.
Is what we have increased accessibility, but we have decreased accountability. And what I mean by that is increased accessibility is obvious because every Wi-Fi signal, every cable is, shooting these temptations right into young people. They've got Netflix at their fingertips. And Netflix is loaded with softcore and stuff, and it's not like that all Netflix is bad, just like all TV isn't bad.
Right.
But you can definitely find those corners where this stuff is. Within 2 clicks, you can be watching softcore porn. Google, you can be watching hardcore porn, within 2 clicks. All this is right in their pockets, and it follows them right into their bedroom. So with this increased accessibility, we also have decreased accountability because, this is right there in their bedroom. This is in the bathroom with them. This is on the way to school. This is in the park by themselves. Right. So because of this, increased accessibility and decreased accountability for us as youth workers and parents. A lot of parents, their first response when it comes to these kind of temptations is, I know, I've just got to get the perfect porn filters.
Right.
I've got to get the perfect porn box. And so they often respond with wanting to tighten the grip and increase the boundaries. And boundaries are great. There's some very healthy boundaries. I talk with parents about those all the time. I think it's great to have some parental controls on your devices. But every expert out there knows that no matter how many parental controls you have on your devices, kid could still be in class and be texted a picture, airdropped a picture. And even if your kid doesn't have a device, what's going to stop your kid's friend from walking up to them and saying, hey, and holding out their device and saying, hey, check this out. I mean, this is the world we live in. And unless we all have drones that fly above our kids' heads and zap our kids' friends, which I'm sure we could probably sell if we really wanted to. But we need to actually equip our kids to make good decisions. Right. And so the best thing we can do is alongside good boundaries, because boundaries are important, is bond with our kids, connect with them, engage them in conversations, and talk to them about the truth so that they'll recognize these lies when they see them.
Right. And Jonathan, that's so good, because that's one of the things I was going to say is I talk to a lot of parents, and it seems like we're always looking for that one silver bullet. Hey, what's the one thing that's going to change? And my conversations with parents is it's a multifaceted approach that you have to come to a multifaceted, complicated issue. The four things you talk about, those aren't over the night fixes. It's a so the boundaries with the phone is one thing, but like you just mentioned, engaging your kids and talking to your kids. I mean, what would be like your top three things, that parents could probably do or start doing even today to help with the kids? One thing I've seen in students is when you inspire them to something more, to something better than what the world is offering them, that's part of the issue I've noticed. I don't know if you would add anything to that.
Yeah, no, it's fun. Absolutely. And when you think of and each kid's of course different, but it's amazing how much, for example, this generation cares, and they actually do. It's funny. On one hand, you think they have this, this stigma of being narcissistic and so much like, it's about me and I've just got to think of me, just do you, and there is that on one hand where we've kind of got this kind of, some people would even say this inherently selfish generation, but at the same time, no generation has served more than this generation. They've grown up where all their celebrity role models have always made a difference for homeless people or for horses or whatever, so a lot of young people want to get out there and serve, and they want to make a difference. And the cool thing about young believers who've grown up, knowing the Lord or who we can introduce to Christ is they want to make a difference, and they can make an eternal difference in the life of someone else. So these are some of those fun opportunities where, this inner desire for them to make their mark and make an impact. These are some great conversations we can have. But sadly, there's a lot of these life distractions. Because even though they want to make a difference, even their celebrity role models, who are out there, making this difference, kind of think, sexual promiscuity is no big deal. They think smoking weed is no big deal. So you think about the role models guys have in their pockets, I mean, look at the top music charts right now. You'll see so much Post Malone and these guys and Post Malone, man. I mean, most of the songs, the guy seems like a fun guy. He likes to sit around, play video games, this and that. But it's no secret that the guy sings and raps a lot about smoking pot and about rolling with pulling out your gat and you can even make the sound that your gun makes as you're shooting other people and what he does with hose and this and that. I mean, this is kind of the role models today. It's no big deal to joke about sleeping with hose and shooting others and all this stuff. So we got to talk about these issues, and a lot of parents kind of avoid it. They think, let me just block that stuff out. Yeah. But it's hard to block it out, and it's hard because a lot of parents say they don't necessarily even understand how a lot of this works. I've seen some of the brightest parents I know where they know technology, and there's almost this cockiness, kind of like, oh no, I've got it handled. Yeah. I've had dads tell me, I've got it handled. I've got it blocked at the router level, and so there's no way the kids can even do that. And even if their friends are here, they can't even. And I remember just asking a dad like that, well, what if they just turn off their Wi-Fi and just use their AT&T or the Verizon service to access it. Yeah. And literally the guy was stumped. He was like, well, kids, they don't want to use their data. I'm like, dude, no matter what we do, I've seen parents take away their kids' phones. They see, well, we're not even going to have screens. And some of these parents, their kids have an old iTouch, and they don't realize that their kid on their old iTouch, has those same apps on their iTouch, and they're using, or I've seen kids put literally their own accounts on their friends' phones and use them at school. So this is one of those things where not all kids are doing this, but we need to talk with our kids about some of this stuff, because most of our kids aren't locked in a cave. I talk at homeschool conventions with parents, and I say, hey, most of you guys, our kids are at sports during the day, this kind of stuff. Well, what do you think the other kids are talking about in sports? I mean, we need to equip our kids. And one of the things I constantly tell parents is, keep your eyes on the calendar, because someday your kid is going to be 18 years old, and they're going to be across the country in some college dorm, in some Army barracks, and they're going to be making these decisions by themselves. They're not going to call you up and say, hey, Mom, can I watch, the final season of Game of Thrones? No, they're going to make that decision by themselves. And the only question you can ask yourself is, have we equipped them for that day? Have we equipped them to make that decision? And so we need to instill truth in them and have these conversations. And that's why I write this stuff. When our daughters want to be on social media all the time, that's why I wrote The Teen's Guide to Social Media and Mobile Devices. It's what Doug Fields called the new phone contract for young people today. It's the book you could say, hey, you want a phone? Okay, read this first, because it talks about who you connecting with, what are you posting, self-esteem, what are you streaming? I mean, it's talking about the issues that a lot of parents go, well, I don't know phones. I don't know that. Well, here's a tool where you can actually talk with your kids about these things, because this is important stuff. This is their world today.
Yeah, and having those hard conversations is key. Like, I know there's so much research, and I think you even mentioned, and one thing that I read from you about Common Sense Media, that even in the Common Sense Media of like the top 5 ways to block porn, the first paragraph says, even in these 5 things, you still have to have a conversation about porn with your kids. And so conversations, you can't avoid it. And we got to encourage our parents to have those conversations. And one of the things Joe does really well with our parents, and I've seen him and heard stories of helping parents not freak out. And so we've developed, if a kid comes to you, we've challenged parents, and Joe has challenged parents, like, the first 10 seconds are key. And so we call it the first 10-second principle of, like, all right, when your kid comes to you, like, you want your kids to come to you on their best day and their worst day. And if they come to you saying, hey, I saw this online or whatever, or you catch them outright, those first 10 seconds are key. You have a phrase, and I love it, and I want you to explain it. You say, don't overreact, interact. Could you just explain that a little bit?
Yeah, I will, and kudos for the first 10 seconds. I like that. For me, it'd have to be the first 10 minutes, because after 10 seconds, I'd blow it right there. So maybe the first 10 days, but no, that's good. I like that. And as a matter of fact, on the sourceforparents.com, there's an article right now all about young people and pornography, and basically our sons and pornography and this temptation. And I talk about that very thing, and I literally I say the first thing that we tend to do is come in with all this. Well, I just got to have these porn blocks, and the first thing I talk about is basically, are you a safe person to talk to?
Yeah, exactly.
Are you a safe person? And I literally challenge parents to think about this real quick. Is this one of those subjects where you freak out? And I use those same words that you just used, freak out. As a matter of fact, got to give kudos to Shanti Feldhahn in her book For Parents Only. One thing she just keeps saying over and over again is, don't freak out, don't freak out, don't freak out. I spend 2 chapters on it in my book, If I Had a Parenting Do-Over, talking about how when we freak out, we communicate to our kids, hey, Dad's not a safe person to talk to. Mom's not safe. I would never bring this up to Mom or Dad. And it's funny, whenever I talk with young people about sex, they come up and they go, hey, thanks for dialoguing about this. I'm like, hey, do you ever talk to your parents about it? And whenever I ask that question, the number one response I get when I ask today's church kids, have you talked with your parents about sex? The number one response I get is laughter, literally bursting out laughing. I would never talk to my parents about this, because then I know they would freak out and they would take away my phone. They would, take away my Netflix. They would take away, and they're like, I don't want that. So in a way, young people are kind of like, hey, I want to do this, but if I can do this without getting all my stuff taken away, this would be great, because I know Mom or Dad would freak out. So the thing I always talk to parents about, and whenever I do a parent workshop, I spend all this time talking about, okay, here's the apps young people are on, here's the music, and parents tend to see us, they go, oh man, oh no. And so I literally stop halfway through the parent workshop. I say, okay, right now, let's make a game plan for when we get home, because if we go home and freak out, if we go home and say, okay, phones, now, give them to me, and I better not find any Cardi B or Post Malone, and I said, I know that's the temptation, but I literally challenge parents to pray for days. And I say, make an appointment, because usually I do my parent workshops on Sunday. So I say, make a family meeting at Thursday, Friday, find a time where you guys can get together for pizza as a family and actually talk. I said, so you've had time to sleep about this, because the tendency is to overreact, and we need to turn our overreaction into interaction, because most of the values that we can pass on to our kids are going to be passed on through conversation, not through our rules. So as important as it is to have fair, loving boundaries, and I encourage parents at these conversations to sit there and say, okay, let's talk about how can, we want you guys to be able to be wise with your phones, and, but here's some of the loving boundaries we're thinking about. One is we're not going to have phones in our bedrooms at night, because here's the research, it's nothing but trouble, but, you can lay it all out. I lay it out in the parent workshop, but, we're going to have a free service for you where we charge your phones up for you, and we're going to give you a brand new, fresh charged phone in the morning. That's just something we do as mom and dad. It's a free service we provide. And it's funny because I've heard so many parents talk about where they even had a docking station, downstairs in the kitchen or whatever, and stories of their kids, sneaking downstairs and getting that device and getting on it. Because of the almost addiction, I've got to, see this. And so I joke with parents about this. I'm like, no, put that docking station right on your bedstand, right next to your bed, and then crush a light bulb right in front of it, right there on the wooden floor, so that you can hear their little foot. Yeah, no. But I mean, it literally, it's one of those things that this is, and loving boundaries. Yeah. Along with some amazing conversation about, hey, let's talk about this. Let's talk about what you're posting, what you're streaming. We need to have these conversations, and these 4 battles are 4 big areas we need to conversate about.
That's good, man. So good. Yep. So shifting gears. This one's just fun because I read this in another book that you have that's coming out with Doug Fields, Parenting in a Screen-Saturated Culture. This is not, it is, but it's technology, it's everything, but it's just one of your rules that you had at your house. You had a rule with your kids that you were going to have no rules by the age 17 and a half. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. That's something I talk about in that book with Doug, and I also talk about it in my book, If I Had a Parenting Do-Over. Yeah. I talk about that because that's something I didn't do with my oldest kids, and so when I got done, I didn't do it with my son, who's my oldest, and by the time my daughter was about halfway through high school, I'm like, man, this is, because a lot of parents, they think, okay, I've got to have these rules, I've got to have this strict, I've got to raise them right, and we think that the answer to raising them right is more discipline, more tighten that grip and save them from everything. And I said, man, again, this is one of those times where we got to keep our eyes on the calendar, and this shouldn't be just, tight rules, and all of a sudden, at age 18, set them free, let them go, for the first time ever, they're making choices for themselves. I've never touched a phone in my life. Woohoo! Right. Look at all I got here. Nobody's ever sat down with me and thought, hey, let me think about who you're friending, what you're posting. We never had those conversations because the answer was always just no. The answer was always made up for me by mom and dad. I never had a choice on anything, that's not a good way to parent, and it doesn't work. We've seen it not work. Right. So my whole goal was, hey, I want to give my kids more freedom as they get older. And even though, my kids, they're middle school, they're like, Dad, all my kids, all my friends have phones, And of course, they didn't like the fact that, I really knew the percentages. I'm like, oh, actually, correction, 78% of your friends have phones. That didn't work very well. But anyway, it was one of those things where, all my friends have phones. Can't I have it? And I said, listen, I know you're in middle school. I know you think I'm the strictest dad in the world, but here's my goal. Yeah. My goal is by your senior year, you're going to have no rules. Wow. That's right. Basically, it gets easier and easier. My goal is to trust you and give you more and more, even though you're probably not going to get your first smartphone till high school, which, by the way, I still stand by that. Common Sense Media, Bill Gates, you name it, all the experts out there, they, with their own kids, waited till high school to give their kids a smartphone, usually 14 years old. They wait till at least 13 years old for social media, which is a no-brainer because, and I talk about this all the time in my books and my parent workshops, you can't even get on Snapchat, Instagram, or Twitter, or any of these without TikTok, I mean, name it, without lying about your age. If you're 11 or a 12-year-old, you have to be 13 years old, according to the FTC's COPA, the Child Online Privacy Protection Act. If you try to sign up for Snapchat and you're 11 years old, it says enter your birth date, and if you enter it in, it'll be like, oh, I'm sorry, you're not old enough. So what do kids do? They lie. I mean, so many, Joe, ask your middle school kids, any middle school kid there that's under 13 with a phone, they've lied about their age. So, I mean, this is a no-brainer for parents where we can have these loving guardrails and say, hey, you know what? No. The answer isn't no. It's not yet. We're not denying them a device. We're delaying a device. And I'm a big advocate of that. And I told my kids, I said, it might seem strict now, but you're going to get a device. You're going to learn how to use it. And the older you get, the more freedom you're going to have to get more of these apps and make these choices on your own. In fact, your senior year, you're going to have no rules. And they were kind of like, okay, that's cool. And they kind of held out. Yeah. And sure enough, they did start to see when they were 14, they got, more choices. When they were 15, they would come and say, can I go see this movie? I'm like, I don't know. Can you? Tell me. What do you think? And I started letting them kind of try to choose some of this. And I still had veto power, but I honestly, at their senior year, they'd come and they'd say, can I do this? I said, well, you make the choice. And my logic was that, hey, why is it, when all of a sudden when they're out of the house, when they're 18 years old, they're across the country making these decisions on their own for the first time, why not them making decisions for their last year in my house? Where if they make a mistake, maybe I'm there to help pick them up.
Yeah, that's really good.
And so, and it worked amazing.
That's so
it really
good.
did. Because I mean, literally it was kind of experimental. I was like, let's try this. And luckily enough, my girls are amazing, but it was, my youngest, especially who got the most benefit from it. She remembers she'd come to my senior year, her senior year, and she would be like, hey Dad, can I go here? I'm like, I don't know. Can you? And they ended up asking me more advice than permission. They'd be like, I'm thinking of going here. What do you think? I'm like, I don't know. And we'd talk. We'd have conversations about it. And you know what? It was the exact same thing she was doing the next year at college. And my youngest ended up going to a Europe semester and being in 13 different countries in one semester. So she's in, from Ireland to Amsterdam to whatever, with a bunch of kids making all kinds of decisions. And it was funny because she'd be on the phone with me. She's like, hey, we're going here and, we're going to go do this. And even her friends were like, who are you talking to? She's on my dad. They're like, really? You're talking to your dad? Because she was just used to, having the freedom to make these choices.
That's awesome.
And, as parents, don't fool ourselves. Don't think that we're going to be controlling our kids when they're 20 years old. We aren't.
Yeah.
They're going to be making these decisions on their own, and we need to equip them for that day.
Dude, so fascinating. Like, as a dad of young kids right now, I'm just thinking that's incredible. Like, just to be able to say, it's a no now, but it's a yes coming. So
it's not a no, it's a not yet.
It's a not yet.
And when your kids are young, it's tough because if either of you do either of you guys have a 10 or a 12-year-old, or are they really younger than that?
I got 7.
I got a 9-year-old.
Yeah, you got one.
Yep.
Oh.
And 2.5.
Well, and we live in a world where the average kid gets a phone at literally 10.3 years old. So even your 9-year-old has, is at school where other kids that got devices, and even and it's funny how many parents were like, oh, my kids don't have a phone, so they just have an iTouch, or an iPad, or well, that's all the same stuff except for the phone part, And so if we are not, noticing and saying, hey, we better have passwords, and the kids better not, we better not just be using our birth date for passwords, because a 9 and 10-year-old doesn't know how to navigate that world. Yeah. And it's scary. I deal with this all the time. I go and I do school assemblies, and I'll talk with, and a principal will come up on a middle school campus, and I'll be like, so tell me what's been happening recently? And story after story of, and sadly, the most common story is guy puts pressure on young girl to send a nude or a sexy pic. Girl finally sends that sexy pic. When they finally break up, a week later, a month later, a year later, guy passes that pic all over the place. Then girl doesn't even want to go to school anymore because everybody's looking at her laughing, and this happens all the time. And very often the kids will be like, well, I thought those pictures disappeared, because they just didn't have good information.
Yeah.
They didn't think before they posted. No one talked to them about, because their role models do this stuff, and think it's no big deal. I mean, also, and any parent that goes and listens to any Cardi B song or Nicki Minaj song or any of the stuff that stuff, I'm talking stuff in the top 10 and hear what they're talking about. Well, yeah, that isn't this the natural thing to do? Maybe I should do that too. So we need to have conversations with them. That's why when I talk with guys about sexual temptation, I actually even take one of the chapters where I take a song. It's a Cardi B song basically, and it's where she and a couple other guys were in this rap, and they're talking about one night stands, and I basically say, okay, let's look at this song. Is this true? Is it okay to have, this many 100 one-night stands? Is it no big deal? So I quote the G-Eazy lyrics of, I had 300 one-night stands. I keep a Costco pack of condoms on my nightstand. And I sit there and go, okay, well, let's play this out. If you used a condom every time you had a one-night stand, let's look at the back of this box here on the condom. It says 98% effective against teen pregnancy. Okay, so if you're 98% effective against teen pregnancy and you have 300 one-night stands in 1 year, how many statistically girls is G-Eazy going to get pregnant? And I love it. I do this at school assemblies, and all the math kids are like, 6. I'm like, yes, correct. Statistically, G-Eazy now has to pay child support for 6 women per year. Now, how does this affect G-Eazy's budget? No, I don't go there. But the thing is, it's amazing just talking about this. I take them to the CDC webpage, and I say, okay, now let's talk about STDs. Because again, every voice coming through their cool ear pods, is saying, hey, just do it. It's fun. Who cares? Just have fun with it. And none of them are talking about, and be careful. The only condom message I heard in top music is either I didn't even use a condom or I keep a pack of condoms as I'm having 300 one-night stands. So I explore that with the kids and I go, well, how much will this protect you? We talk about diseases like HPV, which condoms, aren't super good at preventing. And I'm very honest with them. I'm like, hey, condoms are this effective with this, and we, again, straight off the CDC webpage. But these are the conversations that moms and dads sometimes don't navigate because they think I'm afraid of giving them too much information because they're going to start thinking about it. If your kid's got a set of headphones, they're already hearing it. But they're hearing lies. Where are they going to hear the truth?
That's right.
And I promise you that opening up God's word and open up to passages like Proverbs 5, where you talk about what marriage does look like and what God's gift of sex does look like and what being distracted by other women looks like. These are the conversations we need to have with our kids.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Just spot on. We want to encourage parents to just talk with our kids. And I know it sounds so simple and so easy. I know it's hard, but man, having meaningful conversations is what matters. You can't just put up filters or put up rules and restrictions. You got to talk about this stuff with your kids.
And it is, and a lot of parents are like, well, I don't even know where to begin. And that's why I try to write these resources. My goal is that a book like this, Guy's Guide to 4 Battles, will open up this dialogue, and you could just hand it to your kid and say, read it, but we know how that works. The best thing to do is for a dad to say, hey, I'll tell you what, why don't you read this chapter on smoking weed this week, or why don't you read this chapter on pornography this week, and let's go out to breakfast, let's talk about it.
I love it,
and it's got discussion questions at the end of the chapter, so
good.
The parent knows how to ask and say, what do you think about this?
So good. Jonathan, man, thank you so much for being with us. You've written a ton of books. This book for sure. All our parents listening, especially with young men in your home, man, go grab this book. It's a great resource. It'll be on our description for this podcast. Also, man, your website, thesourceforparents.com, is so rich. There's so much good content there. Parents, go on there. You could there's a search bar. You can search and find some whatever you're dealing with or whatever you're struggling with. It's a great resource for parents. Man, thank you so much for your time today, and thanks for being on the show, man.
Hey, man, my pleasure. Great conversation.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, Jonathan.
Love it, man. All right. I do this with everybody, every guest we have. Parents are busy, right? They're going to make excuses of why they don't read, why they don't listen, or whatever. Like, they got a lot going on. I get it. I am a parent. Like, So if they listen to this whole podcast and they don't pick up any of your books, they don't pick up anything, like what's the one thing that that parents can do? What's the one piece of advice that parents can do today to impact their kids?
Yeah, I would say seek out that bonding time with your kid. In other words, maybe for once, look for that opportunity where instead of correcting, if you see your kid playing video game for too long, instead of saying, hey, your video game hours are up, sit down next to them and say, hey, cool sword. Can I play? And sit down and play with them. Look for an interaction time. Find something they like doing. If there's a certain burger they like or certain fries, say, hey, let's go grab some of those French fries. Find one of those settings where your kids open up and seek out those settings and look for an opportunity to just connect and bond with your kid. Those are the times that once your kids are out of the house, you look back and go, man, I wish I would have had more of those.
Man, that's so good. Good. So parents, look for those opportunities, find those times, sit down with your kids. I know it's so strange that we have to tell parents to do that, but it's a good reminder for all of us.
Thanks for listening to the Empowered Homes podcast. For more content and information to connect church and home, please visit empoweredhomes.org.